Topic 11 deals with statistics and collecting data so we can make conclusions about a population. Um, this topic has a ton of definitions in it, starting off with what a statistical question is. So a statistical question is any question that can be answered by collecting many pieces of information or data. So it's something where we actually have to go out and ask people questions. For example, one, they give us two questions right here. They ask us, in what month is your birthday, and what month has the most birthdays of students at your school? They want to know what's the difference between the two of them. Well, the top one, if I were to ask you what month your birthday is, there's only one answer. So mine is in October. That's the only answer possible. However, if I want to know what month has the most birthdays of students at Franklin, I would need to ask every student. So I need to ask over 1,000 students to figure out which month has the most birthday. Since I needed to collect data for the second question, that would be considered a statistical one. For the first one, since there's only one answer and you don't really have to collect data, that would be considered non-statistical. Moving on. So the second example deals with this concept of variables. So there are two different types of statistical variables that you will run across. Statistical variable is the quantity or quality that we're actually measuring when we collect data. So for example, one, it would be what month the birthday was in. That would be considered a categorical variable because that data falls into a category, or it indicates a quality rather than a number attribute. So our first one would be categorical, falls into categories. Our second type of variable would be quantitative, or a numerical data answer. So example, that would be like, how old are you? Your answer would be a number. Okay, so if your answer is a number, it's considered quantitative. If your answer is not a number, we're going to go with categorical. For example, two, they give us two different types of scenarios. The first one is, what is your favorite summer Olympic sport? They give the results of the data over here. You look at it, it's track and field, basketball, swimming, gymnastics. Those are all different categories. Okay, they are not numbers. So since they're not numbers, our answer for A would be it's a categorical variable. On B, they ask, what is the typical number of apps a teenager has on a smartphone? You look at the data, all your answers are numbers, but you could also think about this on your own. Like, if I were to ask you how many apps do you have on your phone, answer would be a number. That means it is quantitative. So number goes with quantitative. Words go categorical. All right, so one of the last two things we're going to look at is this concept of population and sample. Population is going to be every member for a certain group. So in Livonia, if I wanted to know an answer to a question about high school students, our population would be Churchill, Stevenson, and of course Franklin. So that would be the population, every single student. On the other hand, a sample would be a smaller group, a subset of that population. So an example of a sample for high school students in Livonia would be the students at Franklin. Okay, it's not every student, it's just a small group from the total in the city of Livonia. So for A, they want us to distinguish between populations and samples. It says a school newspaper randomly selected 30 students from each grade to participate in a survey. They want to know, what is the sample in population? Well, the population would be every student at that school. The sample, on the other hand, would be the 30 that they pulled from each grade. So population's big, sample is just a small group from the population. B, you have a polling organization. They randomly choose 1,000 eligible voters. Again, they want to know, what is the sample in population? This one's a little different. Your population would be every person that is eligible to vote in Illinois. Okay, it's not everybody in Illinois, it's just the eligible voters because they're worried about an election. The sample, however, would just be the 1,000 eligible voters that they chose. So not all of the eligible, just the 1,000 eligible they chose. All right, and then the last two definitions for this section we're going to look at are parameter and statistic. Parameter is going to be a measure. Okay, so we collected the data. It's going to be a measure that can describe the population. A statistic, on the other hand, is a measure that describes a sample of the population. The way I like to remember this is go ahead and figure out what are we dealing with first. Are we dealing with a population or a sample? If we're dealing with a population starts with P. Whatever we find is going to be a parameter. Okay, so P goes with P. On the other hand, if we are dealing with a sample, since it starts with an S, it's going to be a statistic. So for this example, you have a high school, they have 3 lunch periods. They randomly select a lunch period. The first thing I do is identify that, hey, we are dealing with a sample because we selected one of the lunch periods. And if we have a sample, that means that the measure is a statistic because it describes the sample. On B, they talk about a movie theater, and they're looking at their total yearly concession. So if it's the total, that would be a population, and population is going to go with parameter. P goes with P. And that's it for section 11.1.